My guest today on Confident Women Ireland is Stephanie McDermott, who hails from Durham and now lives in Kilkenny in the sunny southeast. Stephanie McDermott lectures in the field of equality, citizenships, rights and activism in St. Patrick's College, Carlow. As an educator and activist, her work centres on social action, civil engagement and representations of minority groups. Stephanie has extensive experience in working with civil society organisations and is one of the co-founders of Rohingya Action Ireland. In Carlow College and the wider Carlow Kilkenny community, Stephanie takes an active role in raising awareness of human rights abuses and the wider issues, inclusion and interculturalism. Stephanie is also on Ireland's 1 Million Stars project, which is with Amber Women's Refuge here in Kilkenny. Stephanie is also a regular guest on my Woman to Woman show on local radio here in Kilkenny. Stephanie, you're so very welcome to the Confident Women Ireland podcast.
Thanks, Roisin. That's just lovely. Your introduction is lovely.
So, Stephanie, you hail from Durham and you're living in Kilkenny and you work in Carlow. And Stephanie, as I mentioned in my intro, you're a human rights activist and you lecture in equality and diversity. Where did you get your sense of purpose in human rights, and particularly in women's issues, to begin with?
You know what? I really don't know, but I do know that from a very young age, I was very aware of fairness. Okay. So I was born in the early 60s. I'm one of 9. I have 6 brothers. My father died when I was 9 years of age. He died in 1970. And I think growing up as the oldest girl in a family with 6 boys, I think I was acutely aware that there was an imbalance in terms of how the chores were divvied up in the house. That's my feeling, and I felt that. And unlike my sisters who got on with it, I complained a lot about why maybe some of my brothers were not washing up after them, or not cooking, or just not sweeping the floor. The chores that women do, girls do in the house. Now it's all changed, of course, now, which is great. But I did definitely feel that. And then I think too, I felt, I suppose, Ireland in the 1970s, when I was coming into a teenager and all of that, as a girl and as a woman, I did feel that the institutions of Ireland, let's say, the church, for instance, had a very strong say in women's lives. And I didn't think that was very fair. I didn't think, and actually it turned out when we look back, when we were taking instructions and advice from the Catholic Church, it turned out that their advice wasn't taken on for themselves, if you know what I mean. So a lot of people were
double standards.
That were double standards. So that I did feel that, I did feel that, and I then. So I did feel I was not. I felt just very much out of place in Ireland, in where I suppose where I came from, and then I decided, look, I'm going to travel. So I went to Africa.
Did you, Stephanie?
Yeah, 1983, and I think that was the start of it. Where I started to really think about how the world was divided, I suppose, and how power was distributed, and how some people have it, some people don't have it. And of course, women back then, and we know that things have changed greatly, but we still have a long way to go in the sense of empowerment for women, and attitudes to women, and all of that. All of that is we really do. Society has a long way to go, and we're the ones that live in the West, the lucky ones. So we should be leading the way, and we should get our own house in order before we look at other cultures, and be critical of other cultures and religion. So, and I don't, mentioning religion there, I'm not critical of the church per se. I think most people will admit that there was definitely an imbalance of power, and still is.
Yeah, I agree.
In some religions. So I just felt it. So I don't know. I think too, Roisin, I do think that if you go through something, your resilience builds up, and that resilience makes you think a lot more, because you have to work through something, and you have to get to a place yourself where you feel that you are true to yourself. And I think if you're true to yourself, then you can try, at least listen to others, and try as much as you can to support others, and ultimately empower, I think.
Yeah. I never knew you lived in Africa, because I lived in Africa. I lived in Africa in the mid to late 70s. We lived in Warri in Nigeria. My father was
I was
working over
West
there.
Africa as well. Yeah, you were a child though, weren't you?
I was a child, yeah.
Yeah.
I was
So
a child.
it's a very wonderful experience.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
I never knew that about you. All the conversations we've had, and we're only realizing that now. And I agree with you with the Catholic Church. I love my faith, but I don't agree with everything. I don't agree with the Catholic Church on an awful lot of issues, and the hypocrisy, and the double standards and everything else. And when you think about the mother and baby homes, and how the Catholic Church have really ruled Ireland, when you think from the formation of state, I disagree. And even with the issues we're having now with the National Maternity Hospital, and turning over the land from the Catholic Church to the government, and I love my faith. I have very strong faith, and I am a Catholic, but it doesn't mean to say that I'm not a practicing regular churchgoer. Christmas Eve, I wouldn't miss it. You think I was, but I love Christmas Eve. But I do have very strong faith. But that doesn't mean to say that I don't question the Catholic Church.
Yes, yeah.
And I don't say no. I probably would be a rebel. I was accepted into the convent. You'll love this one. Realized, God, no. It'd be like a cage, and they wouldn't be able to keep me quiet. And I'm a bit of a rebel anyway. Then I go marry Presbyterian. So religion, I think my religion is being kind to everybody, practicing what you preach, and showing that kindness and equality, and Christian values. Is it Christian values? We're brought up to say Christian values, but bringing up that human values, and even animal values as well.
Yeah, well, we are animals, humans and other animals. That's,
we just think we're a higher species.
Absolutely. No, it's the hierarchy that's there, So I think there is a question, though, but I suppose we all need to question ourselves in terms of the power that we keep and the control that we keep, and why do we need to hold on to that power, and why do we need to hold on to that control? And I suppose that's a question for the church in terms of the National Maternity Hospital. Like, why is it important? Why is it so important that you need to imprint your ethos and as an exchange for this land? And I think that's something that it goes back again to reflection. Reflect a little bit, question, why do I need to keep that? Why do I need to control? Why do I need? And that ultimately goes back to yourself. And if you try to unpack that a little bit, first of all, you get to know yourself a lot better. And getting to know yourself, and knowing your reactions, and knowing what conversations you can't have because you get really passionate about it, and learning to self-regulate, I think, is really important.
I do that quite a bit.
But it is important. It is important. But it is about, just getting to know yourself. And again, my friend Monica, I remember we would have conversations about, we'd always feel a little bit perhaps guilty about buying something for ourselves, or, there's always these, as decisions to be made. And she talked to me about honoring yourself, that we really need to honor ourselves and not feel guilty that if we're spending that little bit extra on a little piece of something that we really want, or the extra coffee, or whatever it is. So that's something I when I see something, or when I think, gosh, I might use that, I think, look, just honor yourself, honor yourself. And that's it. It's not, I think in Ireland, women have been brought up to put up, if you like, and offer it up. but I think we certainly need to question why we are in that position and why we've been put in that position and why it is in someone's interest to keep us in that position. That, you know, uppity women, you know, you've heard that,
or she's difficult to work with, or she's a difficult woman. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Or she has issues, and you know, yeah.
Because people fear, you see, people fear what they don't understand. So, you know, some people may not, they interpret an uppity woman as a bossy woman, as a woman that, you know, just doesn't know her place, all of that. And I think that's what we need to question. We really need to question that, because it does hold us back. Because if you want to speak up at a meeting, let's say, and you feel that, look, I need to say this, and if you're not being allowed, but that could be like that, not allowed in the sense of body language, or, you know, something like that, you know, the hand goes up, or just a minute, or whatever. You know, it's really important for yourself and for others to, you know, your voice is worth hearing. Yeah. And it is disrespectful by others to silence people like that.
And too, Stephanie, when you go through the Irish history and our Irish culture, you know, even through our arts and culture and through our poems and storytelling, Ireland is referred to as a woman. You know, even the brave old woman did say, and well, Ireland is, and Ireland, in all through our history, we've had strong, empowered, feisty Irish women who have fought for freedom, liberty, and for what's right, and warriors. Even look at St. Bridget, who we're going to now in 2023 make St. Bridget's Day a bank holiday.
Yeah, the first woman, the first saint that we honor with a bank holiday. Not, I shouldn't say bank holiday, public holiday.
Public holiday.
When I say bank holiday, I think that means that the banks, we're still using that old language that everywhere closed down because the banks closed down. But we utilize now just the banks, so public holiday. And that's, you know, that's great that we another day to reflect on the achievements and where would we be? We stand on the shoulders of many of these great women and of course on great men who have fought for freedom and equality.
You know, and we talk about that too. And even, you know, even when we look back to our recent history from the formation of the state, the women were very active in from you know, with the formation and for fighting for equality and fighting for the suffragettes. We go back to the suffragettes and going back to looking for independence from Britain from 1912, from what I've been reading in my history books, but before that too. But in our recent history, 1912, 1916, 1921, and the War of Independence, the 1916 Rising War of Independence, and then we were airbrushed out of the photographs. And then when you think then that women weren't allowed to work for the public service, was it until 1973, am I right?
Yeah, that was called the marriage bar.
Yes.
So the European Union, of course, in order for us to join the European Union, we had to change policies and legislation and all of that. So, and, you know, the European Union really did, you know, it dragged us into the 21st century. It had to, because of the laws that were in place. Yes, so if you worked for the public service, you once you got married, you had to give up your job, and that was in place until 1973. Now there were caveats. You know, some people they did give up their job, and then they went back, but they got paid really poorly, daily rates, all of that. So they were still doing the same job, but they lost their status. So that was only 1973, and I know people might look back and think that was a long time ago. No. For many of us, it's, you know, it was when we were teenagers and a little bit older than us, you know.
I was 5. You know, my mother. That goes back to our mother's times.
Yes. Yeah.
You know, it's only just, and we all remember that. And then when you think about, you know, here in Ireland, we had the marriage bar. Then you think of the mother and baby homes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, and then you know,
horrendous. Mother and baby homes. the Granard case, the Kerry Babies case, all of these. I mean, these were all, discussed at length in newspapers and all of that, debate, and lots of people knew that this was wrong. But of course, again, there was a lobby there that, weaponized women, if you like. They were the sinners. And it goes back into this Mary Magdalene kind of, the sinner, and the women leading the men astray and all of that, which is really disrespectful to men, as if men didn't have their, they didn't have intelligence themselves. So, but really, it's like, oh, this harlot of a woman, leading my man astray, all that kind of stuff. But I think they are the big items, if you like. But there are so many more smaller items in terms of what's going on in the home, and what's, we talk about, the recent case of Aisling Murphy. She was only going for a run. Women all over the country are only in their own homes.
Yeah.
They're only going out. They're only walking home. They're only doing normal things like everybody wants to do, just going to ordinary places. And that just doesn't happen randomly. It's a series of what we would call microaggressions, in society, that there's a culture built up that women are somehow targets, and it is to do with power, attacks and assaults. It is to do with power. So we need to be very, very, we need to really talk to our young sons and our young daughters, and our teenagers and our schools and GA clubs, rugby clubs, everyone around.
And the workplace as well.
Oh, absolutely. The workplace. But you see, by the time you get to the workplace, the culture is embedded. Yeah. If it starts much earlier, it's very difficult, because people, like, by the time you get to the workplace, it starts to become really personal. Yeah. And it's very hard. It is really hard to tackle a situation, because you're almost one-on-one, Whereas if you started in a classroom, a discussion where it's not personal, where this is an acceptable way to behave, and this is an unacceptable way to behave, by the time you get to the workplace, that's a given.
Yeah,
that's
in the playground. Start off from the cradle to the playground.
Absolutely.
And to the kindergarten, to the play schools, after school care, and then in the classroom, and have that zero tolerance to violence. You know, when you think about it, you're also on the committee of the 1 Million Stars project in Ireland, which is really, really becoming a huge success here in Ireland, the 1 Million Stars project. Can you tell us about that?
Well, the 1 Million Stars project it started in Australia, after the death of an Irish woman, Jill Marr, and Siobhan McKillen, who works for Amber Refuge in Kilkenny, she was living in Australia at the time, and she went to the 1 Million Stars exhibition, which is groups at the time in Australia were so outraged by the murder that they wanted to do something similar to the Aisling Murphy case, where people just needed to meet. They needed strength from each other. They needed that show of solidarity that, this has to stop. Okay. So in Australia, what they did, they started weaving stars to represent light and hope and solidarity. And those stars went into hundreds and thousands, and it eventually went into the 1 million stars. So Siobhan then returned to Ireland, worked with Amber Refuge, got a job with Amber Refuge in Kilkenny, and then put it to the committee there. And they said, absolutely, let's try this. So it's been going now, I think it started in 2019, I think. And then we had COVID. So where are we now? 23. Yeah, so 2019. So it started in Kilkenny, Carlow, and then it has reached how many counties now?
18 counties, I believe. But nearly I think Donegal and Cork are coming on board as well. They've agreed to come on board just before Christmas. So,
great. So every county will eventually have, weavers, that men and women, it's in schools, where they weave stars. And of course, with stars, light always gets through. You look at the star, and the star gives light and hope. And they're beautiful stars, they're woven in all sorts of colors, you recycle. And then in Carlow College, we have an exhibition of stars there. of course, in Kilkenny, in the Castle Yard, it's there as well, the big love signs with all of the stars on it. So, and it was in the Medieval Mine Museum. So it's, yeah, so it'll be, once we, and you know that yourself, you've been in on the meetings as well, Roisin, once we, you know, I suppose coordinate, and now that we're outside of COVID, or almost outside of COVID, the stars will come together to form the 1 Million Stars exhibition.
And you know what? It's just amazing to see, you know, when you see them, all the stars attached to the love installation, which was in the castle. It was exhibited in the castle. Now it's in the market, in the castle yard. Yes. You know, it's amazing to see the colors, and color is very healing for an awful lot of people. And I Stephanie know, as Siobhan knows, she's an art therapist, but it's a wonderful thing now that if we can get the 1 million stars here in Ireland, that would be an amazing achievement in the global aim into making it 1 billion stars. Yeah,
and it's sending that message out, but it's also, it's starting a conversation. You know, some people say, well, what difference is that going to make? It makes an enormous difference when there are groups of people sitting down together, doing an activity which is therapeutic in itself. You know, doing an activity and producing something that represents solidarity and light and hope for so many. So that's why it is so powerful. It is really, really powerful. So there's stars everywhere. So, you know, we're always weaving stars, and it can be easily done. Sometimes you're in a meetings and you're just, you know, you're there and you can be weaving stars, or you're sitting in the car waiting for, you know, picking up children. There's all these spaces where you can meet stars and just build them up, and they represent, as I say, light, hope, and solidarity.
Stephanie, you are such an advocate for women and women's rights, but human rights as well, not just women's rights. I'm really curious, because every time I speak to you or your students, I always go, wow, I would love to be a student in Stephanie's classroom. Tell us about the work that you do, because I would love to actually say, right, I'm going to go and study full time and become one of Stephanie's students. And I go, wow, I'd love to do that. Tell us about your work.
Oh, well, first of all, I love my work. I mean, you know, how could you not love the opportunity to stand in front of interested students in Carlow College who just love hearing you talk and love hearing about perhaps human rights abuses, but also what can we do about it? Yeah. So, you know, yes, I would call myself a human rights activist, and try to raise awareness on human rights abuses around the world and indeed in Ireland. So I suppose I have to talk about the Rohingya here. So the Rohingya, they're a group of people that come from Burma, and the Rohingya came to Ireland. About 46 Rohingya came to Ireland in 2009. They came to, their UN program refugees came to Carlow in 2009. Now, the Rohingya have faced horrendous abuses. And in fact, anyone that is a program refugee will have faced horrendous abuses, because that's where the UN intervene and take them out of the situation they're in and place them in other countries that have agreed to take refugees. Okay, so the Rohingya. And we know that the Rohingya, Aung San Suu Kyi, if you remember, in Burma, she, again, and the army, the military army there was a genocide in 2017. They have been stripped of their citizenship rights. They're in camps, most of them. There's about 2 million in Cox's Bazar in Bangladesh, in a refugee camp there. So the Rohingya that came to Carlow all came from the Cox's Bazar refugee camp. So I worked with some of the women through Carlow County Development Partnership, obviously very, very concerned about their families back home and the ongoing human rights abuses. So that's what we did. We formed Rohingya Action Ireland, and we have been working ever since to highlight some of the abuses. So the most recent campaign that we are on, there are community education facilities in Cox's Bazar, but they have been shut down by the Bangladeshi authorities, which means that Rohingya children and young people have no access at all to education, none whatsoever. So we have started a campaign to reinstate reinstate the educational facilities. So there's that. There's also the court case now with Aung San Suu Kyi in The Hague, where the Gambia have taken Myanmar and Aung San Suu Kyi to the International Court of Human Rights to decide on whether she is guilty of genocide or not. So the last ruling, which was before COVID, we went to The Hague. We also went to Geneva. So, just to promote. Now, Ireland stands very high in terms of its voice at many of these places and meetings and campaigns. So it's just really about pushing and highlighting as well, highlighting the horrendous human rights abuses that not only do people suffer, children suffer, but women are constantly at the front line, and women are certainly at the front line in Bangladesh and in Myanmar in terms of the abuses, physical, emotional, horrendous abuses. So it's just important to keep that on the agenda, keep it in people's, awareness that not a lot has changed in Myanmar. The military are still ruling with a very iron fist, and they are continuing to commit human rights abuses. So there's Roshin, that's the Rohingya, the Yingar as well. In China, there are so many groups that are allowed. I mean, look at Russia, what's going on now. Look at Ukrainians and the fear that is there. So again, we have to question why are countries allowed to do this? So we look, of course, to the UN Security Council, but then we have problems there with China and Russia having the most votes and vetoing almost everything that comes on the table. So, but it still shouldn't prevent us from trying to make a change, and we have to believe, and this is how I keep going, we have to believe that there's hope. Because if you lose hope, then you won't do anything. You won't do anything. So that's what's really important, just to keep at it. And with social media now, it's certainly it's easier, I suppose, in some ways. But then you're competing with so many other campaigns that are absolutely valid in what they're trying to do. But it's the families of the Rohingya in Carlow that we're really concerned about.
And you also recently set up a fundraiser from Kells to Kabul, because with the hunger and the starvation that's going on there since Joe Biden pulled those troops and everything out of Afghanistan, and the human rights violations against women in Afghanistan as well.
Absolutely.
Tell us a bit about that from your perspective.
Yeah, I suppose the world was shocked, when the US troops pulled out. Now, it wasn't an overnight decision.
No.
It was coming. Let's say it was coming. But what happened, of course, was that the Taliban moved in very, very quickly, and the Taliban are now in control. And of course, we know the history of the Taliban in terms of, again, human rights abuses, but we also know the status of women under the Taliban, education, all of that, not allowed to go to school, all of that. Anyway, I suppose the immediate thing that happened there was we were getting horrendous images from Kabul and other places in Afghanistan where people were clearly suffering. The economy was wiped out, food shortages, it was getting colder and colder. So we thought, a group of us in Kells decided, okay, well, let's just try and do something about it, at least raise awareness. So we got in contact with our Afghan families in Kilkenny. So we got in touch with some Afghan families and we said, look, we'd like to do something. And it just took off, really. It was Kells to Kabul. It started off to be a car boot sale, but then it turned into an auction, a very successful raffle. So in the space of one afternoon, we raised €6,000.
Wow.
So that's €6,000, €1,000, €200 a month goes to 6 families in Kilkenny, and they send that to their extended families in in Afghanistan, not all Kabul, but in other regions that are suffering under the Taliban. So we get little video clips in terms of what they're doing with the money, and that's fine. And, you know, a lot of people supported that fundraiser, and it was wonderful. And unfortunately, I can't put up any of the clips that we get because it would endanger people.
Yeah.
So I just hope people trust that the money is, and it's still going there, and it's getting them over the winter. So that's been going since October. So we have another payment to give in February, which is very soon.
It's a lifeline. It's a lifeline.
Yeah, it is a lifeline. But it's a drop in the ocean, you know. But people are very resilient. You know, they will do anything to survive. They will do anything to protect their children and protect their families. And it is, you know, we can complain about little things, but really, if we walked in somebody else's shoes, some days we think, look, you know, let's just, we're safe. We're in warm houses where we don't fear that someone's going to come knocking on our door. So all of that. So and I suppose I've learned that as well, just to be positive and be happy. Well, try and be happy in terms of be thankful for what we have. Yeah. And we have a lot.
In terms of Ireland, you were on one of my radio shows. You were on the first part one of our radio program in relation to the death of Aisling Murphy and domestic violence. Aisling Murphy was murdered when she was out for a run, and that's what we were talking about earlier. She was out for a run, and but we were also talking about domestic violence and how we can change that narrative of domestic violence and violence, and also the perception of women in modern day Ireland in 2022. And you know, where do you see women now in Irish society? Do you think we have improved upon our equality for women's empowerment, or are we just, is it PR? Is it just a smokescreen and mirrors, or are we really making a difference? Because we really do, across party, at political level, we have some very strong, empowered women at political level, but we need to really bring that down to local community level, don't we?
Mm-hmm. Well, Roisin, we have a lot of very strong women working in communities across Ireland, really strong women making huge difference. I'm also a member of Community Work Ireland, so there's a number of very, very strong women activists, women travellers, ethnic minority women who work in the marginalised areas of Irish society, really strong women doing really good work. Do I think we've made progress? Absolutely, we've made progress. But then I go back to the glass ceiling, if you like. And, you know, we look at maybe companies that are dominated by men. And of course, they are the most qualified for the job and all of that. And those arguments are very sound and very solid. But we have to look at ways of how, you know, if you can see it, you can be it, you know. So I think if young women coming up, they know that the sky's the limit. You know, they've been told that, you know, if you want to do that, we will accommodate that. And it's not just accommodate. When I say accommodate, you know, we will make it happen. We will support you in making that happen.
Yeah.
So everyone needs to look at our own behavior. We look at our institutions. We look at our policies around working from home and accommodating and supporting people, women particularly, you know, who do the bulk of the childcare, do the fourth shift, which is the shift in the middle of the night, getting up with children, do all of that. And that we need to trust that women can do the work and that we support their living situations, whether it is that they have young children, whether it is that they have school-going children, pickups, all of that. We need affordable childcare. We need workplace creches. We need all of these things that other European countries have. You know,
and we don't have.
Universities have creches. You know,
Scottish
universities have creches. You know, and in fact, I worked in Dundee University, and Aidan, my son, went to the creche there for the first year. So, and that was meant you could bring your child to work. You dropped him off at the creche. Now it was very, very hard, really hard to drop him at the creche and then go into the classroom because, he was crying some mornings, he didn't want to stay. And that was really hard, but it was still better than running off childminder or whatever it is. So I think we seriously need to look at how we accommodate, are we doing the best that we possibly can to include women and to support women? Because we know that, women have come through an enormous amount, huge resilience, can work things out, are less aggressive at meetings. And it's not about women have to become like men. It is about harnessing all of the intelligences around that table, whether it's the emotional or intellectual or skill or whatever, but that everybody is given a voice and everybody is valued. And I think a lot of women don't feel sometimes that they are valued at meetings, that they are valued around the table. They're maybe not valued around the kitchen table. They may be dismissed. They're maybe not told, oh, that's a really good idea. I mean, we know that there have been lots of studies done in terms of an idea that a woman has put forward at a meeting, and then a man with a stronger voice will come and people will listen, So we do have to rethink our way of thinking. Why is it that we assume that someone with a stronger voice has more influence? Because as a society, it is the male voice that we have listened to. We have listened to the priests. We have listened to our Taoiseachs. We have listened to male teachers. We have listened to male principals. We have listened to all of that. Now, I know women had a huge role in education as well, but that would be seen, of course, as kind of a caring role. So, we see the public-private thing going on there. So sometimes it is that women and men, that the roles they have had traditionally, whether it's women in the home or men outside the home, it's often replicated. Their roles, their traditional roles are replicated. So women do the bulk of the care. So they enter the caring professions. So that comes into education, it comes into nursing, it comes into social care, it comes into social work, all of that. So the bulk of our universities in social care or in primary school teaching, let's say, they are girls and young women. So it's replicated.
Yeah.
So the same with men. Men, what we have seen in society is that men have been the head of that society, whether it's the church or whether it's our government ministers, whether it's head of organizations, whether it's principals of schools. That's again replicated outside of society. It's the whole thing. If you see it, you can be it. So we need to see more and we need to hear more of reasonable voices and, with the emotional intelligence and all the different intelligences around that table, because there is definitely power in repetition. So if you are told, Roshan, if you're told from a very young age, you're great, you can do that. That's what you will believe, because it's repetition is powerful. Equally, if you are told, I don't think that would suit you, or why don't you go in to do something else? I'm not sure. That's kind of male dominated, isn't it? That's what you're going to internalize that. Now, that's not to say, Roisin, that we should bring up our children and tell them that they are wonderful at everything, because then we have the question of resilience. But there is a way of having that conversation. There is a way of having that conversation. And sometimes they can be difficult conversations. And that's what we need to have. We need to have a difficult conversation. And women need to sit up and say, actually, I just don't feel that you're hearing what I'm saying, to call it out. I think to call it out would be the best thing in a nice way, because nobody wants to hear. It goes back to that uppity woman. Nobody wants to listen to an uppity woman.
Oh, she's difficult to work with. Oh, she has issues and all that kind of things. And that's, I think, too, is that I think women now are speaking up. They're stepping up, they're speaking up, and women need to support women a lot more, and it needs to be real support and not just word salad.
Women need to support women, of course. I mean, look at, we can look at Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton, okay, politics aside, but it was there was no question that people were voting from a gender perspective there. It was the fact that she was a woman that was the issue. And so women are not supporting other women. Now, whether it is that women fear other women, and whether it is that some women fear strong women, because that means that they themselves may have to look through a different lens. So if you have in life, if you have been looking through orange tinted glasses, let's say, and everyone around you is looking through orange tinted glasses in terms of your place and what you do, and the relationships that you have formed and all of that. And then suddenly someone gives you blue tinted glasses to wear. If you put on those glasses, it's really disconcerting for a very long time, So you may decide, look, I want to go back to my orange glasses, which is, I don't want things to change. Or you may embrace the blue glasses and think, actually, it's really interesting looking at life through blue tinted glasses. So I think it is, a lot of things come down to fear, and maybe some women fear stronger women because they also may have to change. And
Yes.
if they change, it can be a can of worms. It can be very scary because maybe they have to question the relationships that they're in, or there's so much has to happen there. But we need to support each other. Absolutely, 100% need to support each other. We're not going to get anywhere, Roisin, if we don't.
No, and that's what Confident Women Ireland is about. It's like it's a platform, a space, and a place to actually promote Irish women who are confident, who have a voice to say it. And a very old friend of mine who actually I met while I was living in Saudi Arabia, Vicky Caldwell, and she used to always say to me, I met her when I was 11, because she owned a pony club in Riyadh in Saudi Arabia, and I was friends with her throughout my life. And she was one of the women I phoned, apart from my mother, when my mother was out in the waiting room in the hospital when my daughter was born. So we kept that close relationship until she passed away recently, a couple of years ago, 4 years now. And I spoke to her in Texas before she passed. She used to say to me, Roisin, if you have anything of value to say, people will listen. And that's what Confident Women Ireland is about. And that's why I always love to be chatting to you. And I would love to be a student in your classroom. It's like, it's about empowering other women and giving women a voice and the platform to actually interpret and express that opinion of what it is women need and all women's issues. And even if what I love too, you were talking about that, the fear. I love sometimes chatting to people who disagree with me and who I disagree with them, because then I realize I'm learning something here.
Yes.
Absolutely. And that's what's important, is I think giving people respect, even if you disagree with them or what they're saying, but you can agree to respect one another.
Yeah. Respect really should be the grounding principle of what we spring from. That you may not agree with you, and I may not agree with what you are saying, but you have the right to say it.
Yes.
And that's I'm going to give you that right. I'm going to give you that space to say it. Now, of course, we get into all sorts of problems when it comes to perhaps hate speech, know, because we are a free country, but we also know that there are many influences around in recent years, in the last 5, 6, 7 years, where hate speech is on the increase, where people are saying things and they are inciting hatred to others. And that's where we need to be very careful. But that's about responsibility. And ultimately, it's about respect. We cannot be saying things that incite hatred. Let's just we ask ourselves 3 things. Is it true? Is it kind? And what is the other one? Is it true? Is it kind? Oh, I've left it on a cliffhanger now, haven't I?
And now I've just had one of them brain freezes. And I said, I'm trying to help. I'll help her out and help her out. And I go, I've had one of them brain freezes.
Is it true? Is it kind? Is it respectful, maybe?
Yeah.
Is it? Is it true?
Well, it all means the same, doesn't it?
It all means the same, you know, loose talk, shooting from the hip. Like, let's stop that. You know, let's reflect and let's be more measured in how we approach others. And what we need to be very careful. And this is a saying or something that has come into the, I suppose, the discourse around language recently. We need to be very mindful of where things land. You know, so I can say something to you, and it might be fine, but I could say the same thing to another person, and it doesn't land very well, you know, because it may be a trigger for other things. So we just need to be careful of the context. We really need to be very careful.
And to close up, how do you view the modern day Irish woman?
The modern day Irish woman. Well, what I would love to see the modern day Irish woman having choice, real choice. I would love to see the modern day Irish woman choose a career if that's what she wants, and that she can and will be supported in every way, that if she chooses a career and also wants to have children, that she is supported in that it should not be a huge dilemma that young women are putting off having children until they get established in their careers, you know, and that, of course, delayed pregnancy can have all sorts of issues, you know, in terms of, you know, trying to get pregnant and fertility and all of that. And equally, I would love to see that if a woman decides not to have a career, not to be in a relationship, to have a career, have children, or have children, that they are supported in those choices, that they are not judged by those choices. So it is ultimately about choice and not being judged, and also absolutely for women to be valued. But men also, young men also have to be valued, because we don't want we don't want the debate to go to, you know, it should be one or the other.
No.
I mean, let's work together, and I would love to see that. I would love to see women and men working together in a sustainable, valued, respectful space, but that women don't have to make these hard choices like they had to make these hard choices, very hard choices, of going back to work after 6 months, they're going to lose their promotion, all of that kind of thing. But it's choice. It's absolutely choice. And if women don't want a career, that's okay. You know, let them.
Stephanie, you know, I would say I didn't realize I was a feminist until I went back to education. And then I said, yeah, I was always a feminist. I just never called myself a feminist. However, we've chatted about this before as well. You know, feminism, I see feminism as the suffragettes, you know, looking for independence, equality for voting rights for women. And then also from the suffragettes right up to, you know, women's rights in the 70s, when you think about here in Ireland. But feminism has, and we've spoken, as I said before, feminism has taken on a dirty meaning and a dirty word now, and a negative connotation. So feminism is, you know, and this new word, this new age feminism, it isn't exactly what feminism is it? Or what's your opinion on that?
No, it is interesting. I've always been a feminist, because I always have believed that feminism means equality. Yeah. But of course, there are different branches of feminism, like there are different branches of Christianity, you know. So we need to be very careful, but it absolutely has taken on this meaning. It's become weaponized. Oh, you're one of those feminists, you know. Yes, I am. I'm proud to be a feminist. I believe in equality. And I do think that there can be a kind of a distorted view among some, that feminism is about being as good as men, or feminism is about dressing exactly the way I want to dress in certain situations, or feminism is about acting in a way that shouldn't be judged. And there's so many permutations now of feminism, and not healthy, I have to say. Not healthy at all. And of course, you have some women who are absolutely anti-feminist, you know. And I just cannot understand that at all. But I think they must be coming from a place where they they believe feminism is the radical feminism, the men haters. I actually don't know any feminists that are men haters. I really don't. So I don't, I mean, there are obviously women who hate men, perhaps because of experiences they have been through and abuse and all of that. And of course, there are men who hate women. That's part of life. But absolutely, I think we need to reclaim it. You know, we had this in the 90s, reclaim the streets, you know, reclaim feminism.
Yeah.
You know? And
for exactly
everyone,
what it is.
We should all be feminists.
Yeah.
I think
and there are an awful lot of men who are feminists as well, and you know, fight for feminism, fight for equality for women, just like many of our Irish history, our Irish men fought for women, for the suffragettes as well.
Yes.
And I think it's about reclaiming the feminism as what it really means. And it's not anti-men, and it's not anti anything. It's just equality for women.
Yeah, it's pro. Let's not talk about anti. It's pro.
No, it's pro women.
And just the International Women's Day is coming up as well in March. You know, yeah, it's great. It's great. And the slogan is #break the bias, which is really very timely. You know, because we have bias. We have conscious bias and unconscious bias. And it is, again, becoming aware of what our biases are. We know what we know, but we don't sometimes know about unconscious bias. So that's something that we need to, both men and women need to look at as well. So break the bias, #break the bias. You know, so that's something we need to be doing as well. And could I just say, in February, obviously St. Bridget's Day, but we have a World Hijab Day as well, where we embrace women who choose to wear the scarf and not to judge that, and just stand in solidarity with them as well.
Well, Stephanie, it's always a pleasure chatting to you. I always love chatting to you, and just hearing what you have to say, because what you do have to say has a lot of value for many women, especially not just here in Ireland, but across the world as well. And you're a great advocate, and you're a great advocate for women's rights and human rights as well. All rights, all human rights. And that's something I really appreciate and respect. And I love being in your company. You're just a great woman here in Kilkenny. And just before we go, can you tell us about the beautiful castle or priory behind you?
Isn't it beautiful? That's Kells Priory. I just live up the road from Kells Priory. Yeah, an Augustinian priory, beautiful. I mean, Kells has so much to offer. It has mills, it has a lovely walkway, it has the river there, beautiful village, wonderful people. And that's where you'll find people walking. It's a good circular walk there. And of course, it was a wonderful amenity over COVID, because we had beautiful places to walk. So that's just behind me there with the rainbow. So again, always look at the rainbow and the end of the rainbow. So just value what we have next door, and value our history, because we are part of what is in our past.
We are indeed. And just funny, it was sitting on my desk, and I wasn't going to. Have you read this book by Clodagh Finn? Through Her Eyes.
Through Her Eyes. No.
Oh wow, that is an amazing book about Through Her Eyes, and it's called A New History of 21 women who have been forgotten in our history.
Beautiful. Isn't that how you see?
Yeah, you know,
written out of history. Yeah. Oh, you've got your notes. Good for you.
I love the book, and Clodagh Finn is do you know it? You probably do know it. She is a journalist for the Irish Examiner.
Yes, absolutely.
And she also tweets every day about various different women in our history and in modern day Ireland as well.
That's great. And Roisin, you know, you should not underestimate the work that you do for equality and for women and for giving people a voice through your program with the radio as well. So don't, you know, we have to, again, honor ourselves and, you know, just look and think, well, actually, I didn't do that today, didn't I? You know?
Well, I appreciate you saying that. And do you know what? It's only recently that I'm starting to see the power that the different platforms have. And I suppose too, I think when I went back, as we said, back to education, I studied media and PR. And then I realized the power that the broadcast media platform has. And now And I got used to do that. And I remember at the beginning, I had imposter syndrome because I would go on the radio and I go, hello, my name is Roisin McClellan, literally like that. And then I remember it was in October, I think it was October 20, I realized I don't need imposter syndrome now because, I have the degree to back it up. Not that that's, but I worked hard for it. I worked so hard for that degree. And then I had the experience and I go, okay, I don't need imposter syndrome. And I remember, and you know her, Maya Fitzpatrick said to me one day, Roisin, what has changed? Because I can hear something's changed in your voice. And I said, really, Mary? And she could name the month and the program. And I said, it was just before that program, I said, I can let go of the imposter syndrome.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And, this is now the power that Confident Women Ireland, I hope it will also, so that it will overflow to Confident Women Ireland now on the social media and the virtual world to empower women and for other empowered women to share their nuggets of wisdom to other women who may not be as confident and maybe looking for confidence and self-confidence and personal empowerment.
It's absolutely, Roisin, and it's hard to come by. If you're not confident, particularly as you get older, it's very hard to start from scratch. That's why we need to start from very early to give people, boys and girls, a good, strong sense of identity of who they are, strong self-esteem, and we're healthier for it emotionally, much better, in a much better place. So it has to start there. But the context of Irish society now, we have had a horrendous history in terms of how we've treated women. So we're dealing with all of that stuff. And I suppose what perhaps sometimes people don't understand, that sometimes things being said can it can trigger something in us that, that brings us back to a place where we know we were put down and we know what women's status was, so that's what needs to be remembered by a lot of people as well, that it's contextualized.
Yeah, and women supporting women and really supporting it without the word salad and just really putting it in action. It's taking the words and putting it in action.
Absolutely. 100%.
Now, Stephanie McDermott, as always, it's an absolute pleasure chatting with you. And thank you so much for coming on Confident Women Ireland today.
And thank you, Roisin, and thank you, Confident Women Ireland. And I'm going to follow you and watch you and see women just grow in confidence, and it'll be wonderful, just wonderful.
And you'll be a regular contributor to Confident Women Ireland as well. I hope.
That would be lovely.
Okay. Stephanie McDermott, thank you so much indeed.